Okay, in this lesson we are going to talk about how to solve two-step equations. So in the previous lesson, yes, we did talk about solving two-step equations, but we are going to take it up a notch, and we're going to talk about a different variable of two-step equations. So let's begin. What is an algebraic expression? An algebraic expression is in simplest form. You'll hear us talk about that a lot. When it has no like terms and no parentheses. To combine like terms that have variables, add or subtract the coefficients. What are coefficients? Coefficients are numbers, the number in front of variable. Okay. When adding or subtracting like terms, you are only changing the coefficients and not the variable. If it helps you, anytime you see a subtraction, you could change it to a plus negative first. So that's a little hint if you would like. And here are how to solve two-step equations. I know there are 3 steps, but I guess I should have labeled this as multi-step equations. Step 1 is to combine like terms. Step 2 is to then, after you combine like terms, you add or subtract to both sides, creating 0 pairs. And then finally, you multiply or divide to both sides, getting the variable all by itself. Okay, so as long as you follow these 3 steps every single time you solve equations, you're good to go. All right, example number 1. Step 1 is to combine like terms. Do I see like terms here? Yes, I do. I have 6x and 3x. 9x is equal to 18, right? And then, do I have to add or subtract anything? Doesn't look like I do. So then I multiply, divide by 9. Divide by 9, you get x is equal to 2. Okay, letter B. So same thing, let's combine like terms. Let's see what like terms I have. 6x and 7x, I have 13x minus 5 is equal to 34. And then let's create this. I have to add or subtract that negative 5. So I could plus 5 plus 5. So 13x is equal to 39. Then my last step is to divide by 13. Why? Because I am multiplying by 13 here. Because 13 times x, get x is equal to 3. So combine like terms, add or subtract, and then multiply or divide. If you follow those 3 steps, you will be able to solve any type of equation. So why don't you try 1 and 2 on your own? Alright, next. When you see parentheses, you may need to use the distributive property to help simplify the expression. The distributive property helps us distribute the outside numbers to both numbers inside the parentheses. Remember, you always get rid of parentheses first. Once again, if it helps you, anytime you see subtraction, you could change it to a plus negative. And it should help you out if you feel comfortable with that. So what do I mean by the distributive property? If you have Mr. Juskowitz in 6th grade, we talked about the double rainbow. So that's exactly what this is. So for example, number 2, I see a number outside my parentheses, so I'm going to distribute this 5 to both numbers on the inside. I like to draw arrows to both numbers because it just helps me out. So that's how I know I have to do 5 times x plus 5 times 2. Remember, I'm taking the 5, multiplying by x, and multiplying by 2. 5 times x is just 5x. 5 times 2 is just 10. I get 5x plus 10. Next example, same thing. Distribute, but remember, you have to be careful. Okay, so this first one is negative 2/3 times 3p. Second one is negative 2/3 times a negative 6. Okay, remember, it takes a sign that's in front. So this is why plus negatives are helpful, because then you know it's negative 2/3 multiplied by negative 6, and that's exactly what I have here. So please be careful with your negatives. If I were to multiply these numbers 3 over 1, my 3's simplify. So it's just negative 2p plus, now let's do this. 6 over 1, this becomes a 1. 2, I get negative 2 times a negative 2, which is positive 4. So I get negative 2p plus 4. Why don't you try the next two examples on your own? Okay, example number 3 is simplify. What imaginary number is in front of the parentheses? Okay, so let's do this first example first. Distribute negative 1/2 times 6n plus negative 1/2 times 4 plus 2n. Negative 1/2 multiplied by 6n is 1. 3, you get negative 3n. Right, negative 1 times 3n is just negative 3n, plus negative 1/2 times 4 over 1, 1, 2, you get negative 2 plus 2n. Don't forget to bring down your 2n every single time. Okay, and then from here, combine like terms of negative 3n, positive 2n. Right, so I get negative n plus a negative 2. Okay? Alright. Next, what imaginary number is in front of my parentheses here? Remember, it's a negative 1 plus negative. If I have a number outside my parentheses, you always use the distributive property. 3m, I copy everything down, plus negative 1 times m is negative m. Negative 1 times a positive 2 is negative 2. Combine like terms of 3m and negative m, you get 2m minus 2 to be your simplified expression. Well, you'll work on 5 and 6 on your own. Alright, last kind of example. To solve two-step equations. So this is the wrap-up final lesson. When you see parentheses, use the distributive property. Okay, after you use distributive property we just did, we combined our like terms. So you must get rid of parentheses first. After you combine like terms, you add or subtract to both sides using inverse operations. Remember, like 0 pairs. And then finally, your final step is going to be multiply or divide to both sides, once again, using inverse operations. Okay? So let's do this. Let's apply this a little bit with the next example. So step 1, I see parentheses. That means I'm going to use the distributive property. So let's use it. So I get 2x minus 14 equals 10. Do I have any like terms on the same side of my equal sign? Doesn't look like I do. So now let's add or subtract to get rid of all the fluff. I have a negative 14, so I'm going to add 14. So get 2x is equal to 24. Finally, I have to divide by 2 because it's 2 times x. So x is equal to 12. Letter B, I see parentheses. Let's use the distributive property. So I have 2 times 2x, which is 4x. 2 times a negative 1, which is a negative 2. Let's copy everything else down. Alright, and in my notes I wrote that next step is to combine like terms. Looks like I have 3x and 4x, which is 7x. Let's copy everything else down. And then what's my next step? Add or subtract using inverse operations. So I'm going to do plus 2. Plus 2, I guess 7x is equal to 35. Last step is to multiply, divide. I'm going to divide by 7. X is equal to 5. Okay, so make sure you show all of your work like this. This is what I do expect on homework and on BIM, in-class activities. I do expect you to show work all the time when we do problems like this. So why don't you work on 7, 8, and 9 on your own. After you finish, you may fill out today's level of understanding. If you still have any questions, make sure you feel free to reach out to me on Remind. And we'll see you all the next day. Bye, guys.